In this lecture, I'm going to talk about hoisting. So in JavaScript, there are two ways to define functions. We can use the function declaration syntax, which is like this. Function say hello. Or we can use the function expression syntax. So we define a variable or a constant. Let's call it say goodbye and set it to a function. So this is what we call a function expression. Now by convention, with function expressions, we should add the semicolon at the end, but with function declarations, we don't add the semicolon here. The reason for that is, let's say here we're going to define a number, set it to 1. Here, because we're dealing with an expression, we put a semicolon at the end. So on both lines 6 and 7, we're dealing with expressions, and that's why we terminate them with a semicolon. Now, semicolon aside, there is a critical difference between a function declaration and a function expression in JavaScript. Function declarations are hoisted, which means they're raised to the top of the code. So I can declare this function here and then call it before its declaration. So here we can call say hello, and that's perfectly valid. So look, we don't get any errors in the console because this function is hoisted, which means raised to the top. So essentially when this code is executed, it looks like this. Okay. In contrast, function expressions are not hoisted. So here, if I call say goodbye, I'm going to get an error. And here's the error. Say goodbye is not defined. Again, because here we're dealing with an expression, we're dealing with a constant or a variable that is not initialized. So if I define, let's say, a constant called number and set it to 1 here, what would happen if we do a console.log of number? We're going to get the same error. Number is not defined. So here the only difference between number and say goodbye is that number is a primitive, say goodbye is a function, or more accurately is an object. So we cannot use these identifiers before they're declared. So function expressions are not hoisted. Okay. Now, when it comes to classes, we can define classes using a declaration or an expression syntax. So let me clear this up. We can define a class like this, class circle. And this is what we call class declaration, which is what you saw in the last lecture. Alternatively, we can use a class expression. So we define, let's say, a constant called square, set it to a class with no name. So this is what we call class expression. Now, unlike functions, class declarations or class expressions are not hoisted. So here I cannot create a circle object like this. It's going to give me this error. Class is not defined. That's because this class declaration is not hoisted or raised to the top. So if you hear hoisting somewhere, that's the meaning of hoisting. Now, which syntax should you use? A class declaration or class expression? Personally, I have not seen a use case for using a class expression. Pretty much everyone uses the class declaration syntax. So stick to that because that's simpler and cleaner.